Hello and welcome to DesignOS. Now that we have our interaction design down, let's talk about the visual design. The visual design framework consists of two steps. The first one is to develop visual language studies, and the second one is to apply a chosen visual style or visual language to your screen wireframes. Let's take an example to understand what these two steps mean. Here is a redesigned version of Amazon. You can find many redesigns of existing apps over on websites like Dribbble and Behance. Now, if you compare this to the existing UI design for Amazon, they are quite different, not in terms of usability. Both of them have the same button placement, features, and interaction design. What's different is the look and feel of the app. The existing design follows Amazon's design language. The redesign follows what looks to be the way the designer envisions Amazon to be. You can see this change happen in Google's apps. Gmail is a Google app that has gone through several changes over the years. They moved it to the material design philosophy, and then as material design changed, they changed Gmail as well, adding features like dark mode as they went forward in design. So let's talk about step 1 of a design framework, which is to develop visual language studies. These studies include color, typography, and widget treatments, as well as the overall dimensionality and any material property of the interface. Visual language studies should relate to the experience goals of the personas, as well as any experience or brand keywords. By this, we mean that if you have a product that is for old people, then you might want to keep your user interface design simple and not too very complicated. You might not want to have any flashy colors, you might want to have great contrast so that it is easier to read, and so on. But if your personas are related to a much younger audience, then you may want to have flashy colors, go into some experimental designs, and so on. Commonly, a company's brand guidelines form a good starting point for this activity. But it should be noted that brand guidelines rarely consider the interactive experience. By this, we mean that if you look at a well established company, you'll see that all of their products look like they were created by the same person, they look like they were created in the same room, they look like they were created with the same end goal in mind. Using a company's brand guidelines, you can try to figure out what kind of colors and typography you may want to have. Also, using the company's brand guidelines, you can also make your product coherent with the other products that the company offers. But brand guidelines should never be the one guiding your interactive experience. By this, we mean that if you want to create an experience, you should go ahead and do that independent of your brand guidelines and not consider any other products that the company may have already made. Brand guidelines commonly consist of a document explaining how a company's brand identity should be visually and textually conveyed. So you should go ahead and try to figure out if your company already has a brand guideline and try to follow that. So let's try to make a simple brand guideline for our own product as well. Let's jump into Figma, and as you can see, I've added a few more flows to our old wireframe that we created in the last video. I've added a notification button that takes us to the notification. I've added a scan, which takes us to a scan QR code screen. I have added a top up button, which takes us straight to our top up option where we can add money to our wallet. So let's go ahead and take the first screen, which is this home screen of ours, which shows the wallet balance, the favorites, and a few more options. And let's try to turn this into a UI design. So I'll hit A to get to my artboards. I'll go ahead and pick the iPhone Pro/X, and this gives me an artboard, and you will usually want to use this specific artboard. It's 375 by 812. You can use the same artboard for iPhone designs as well as Android designs. However, you may want to consult your developer first about the artboard sizes that they might want you to use and design specifically. For now, I will stick to this iPhone 11 Pro/X artboard. The first thing that we see when we look at this wireframe is this rectangle on top. So this rectangle represents the status bar of any phone. On iPhones, you have a different status bar. On Androids, you have many different status bar. So for now, let's go ahead and go to Google and search for Figma iOS UI kit. We'll go ahead and click on this first kit. And as you can see, this particular kit gives you iOS components, UI elements, and templates, and it's free. So let's go ahead and hit duplicate. This will give us this particular file inside of Figma. And now I can zoom in. And as you can see, this gives us the status bar for iPhones. Now this is universal because the status bar was created by Apple. You're going to have to use the same one in your own designs as well, and keep updating your designs as soon as Apple changes their designs as well. So let's go ahead and select this first frame, and I'll copy this particular layer, which is the system light status bar. go ahead and copy that, go back to Figma, and I'll paste it in here. And as you can see, that fits perfectly. Next thing I want to do when I look at this particular wireframe is I imagine a blue colored rectangle that holds all of my top information. So all the scans, top up, the notification, the profile, the wallet balance. I imagine having a blue rectangle in the background holding all of this information. So go ahead and add a rectangle, put it below the status bar, and just increase it in size. Maybe let's say 320 in height. So next thing I want to do is round off this iPhone. So to make your designs come to life, what you want to do these days is go ahead and increase the corner radius to somewhere around 20 because each and every phone these days has rounded corners. All right. Next thing I want to do is add color to this rectangle. I've already selected a few colors for our particular product. You can go ahead and explore some colors for your own product as well. And we'll have a discussion in detail about the colors that you use in UI design and what the colors may reflect for your product. But for now, I'll go ahead and add those colors into my design. So these are the three colors that I would want to use. This is going to be my primary color. You can go ahead and copy the hex code if you want to use the same color for your product. You can go ahead and copy the second color as well. This is going to be my light primary color. And finally, I'm going to use white for most of the text. So the first thing that I want to do is go ahead and add the notification icon on the left side. So I'll go to a website called flaticons.com and I'll search for notification bell. Let's say this particular one, and I'll go ahead and select the outline version of this. And this particular style is called lineal. You can go ahead and search for more lineal icons and get similar icons as this. I'll go ahead and download the SVG file, hit on free download. And now that I have my notification bell, I'll go back to Figma and just pick this up, drop it into Figma and change the size from 512 to 24. All right. So that is going to be my notification icon. I'll change the size of this to something like 22 instead because 24 seems a bit big. And the next thing I want to do is create enough spacing from the status bar and from the left side. So after selecting this notification bell frame, I'll go ahead and hold down shift and nudge my bell down by 2 steps. So that will be 20 pixels. To easily check the spacing between two layers, all you have to do is select one of them, hold down Alt, and then hover your mouse over another layer and it will show the spacing between your first layer and the second layer that you hover over. From the left side, I would want to make this 20 pixels as well. So I can go ahead and select my notification bell layer again and hold on Alt and check the spacing from the left side. This is an easy way of checking all your spacings. I'll go ahead and change the background color of my rectangle to this particular color. And an easy way to do that is to go ahead and select your rectangle, hit I, which brings up the eyedropper tool. And now you can select any color anywhere on the artboard. So I can go ahead and select this particular one. And one thing that you will notice now is that the contrast between this blue and the black is not very good. You can barely see the black on top of this blue. I'll go ahead and select my entire artboard and I'll change the black color into a white. First thing I want you to do is detach this black using this button. We'll go ahead and discuss styles in a later video and what styles actually mean. But for now, let's just detach style and change this 000 into a triple F and hit enter. And that changes all of my blacks into whites. Next thing I want to do is go ahead and hit O and create a circle. Maybe change its height and width to something like 56 or maybe something even smaller. So let's go ahead and change this to 44 and I'll place it on the right side and give it a spacing of 20. And now I can change the spacing of this particular ellipse from the status bar to about 20. And I can go ahead and align my bell icon to the center of my profile picture. Now, what I want to do is add a profile picture to this ellipse. One way of doing that is to go to fill and change this from solid to an image and then select an image. But we're going to do it a bit more differently. We'll go to this top left side, go to the search bar and hit plugins and go to browse plugins in community. This will take us to the Figma community. We can go ahead and search for a plugin called UI Faces. And you can go ahead and install this plugin. As you can see, I have already installed it. So I'll go back to Figma and I'll go ahead and run that plugin. So click on UI Faces. And from this, what I want to do is select all of these options from sources except from IMDb, because IMDb is just a movie website, so it has faces of actors and actresses. You may not want to use that. All the rest are good to go. You can select a gender, or what you can select an emotion. So I'll go with happiness because neutral is not something you want. And you can change the hair color to whatever you like. For now, I'll just not select any of these because I'm fine with any hair color. So I'll go ahead and hit apply avatars. All right. So that is going to be my profile picture, and that looks good over there. Next thing we want to do is add a wallet balance. So I'll go ahead and type some text, your balance. And now we run into the second part of our visual language study, which is what kind of font we may want to use. Right now, I have SF Pro text selected. This is the font that is the default for iOS apps, and I'm going to stick with SF Pro text because I'm designing for an iPhone. You can go ahead and select whatever font you like. We'll have a discussion in detail about what kind of typography you would want to use in UI design, but for now, let's just stick to SF Pro text. If you want to design for Android though, you can go ahead and change this from SF Pro text to Roboto, which is the default font for Android. But for now, I'm going to stick to SF Pro text and change this from semi-bold to medium. And let's go ahead and keep the size at 15. Let's change this to 0. And let's change this to white at 80. I changed the opacity because this is just going to be a caption for our wallet balance. I'll go ahead and duplicate this layer, bring it down, change the opacity to 100, and increase the size to something like 24, which is going to be our heading, and this is going to include our balance. So let's just add a balance of, let's say, 34,645. And let's just change a few things, make it right aligned. And I would also want to show more money, which is going to be the cents. So let's change this to 23, decrease the size to that, and align it to the top of my money. Space it a little, let's say 2 pixels, and I can group this now, and I can add a dollar sign next to my amount and space that a little. So this group now has my balance. I can change the name of this group to balance, and I can align it to the rest of the layers. So that is going to show my balance to the user. Next thing we want to do is add a scan and top up option. And one thing that I noticed when I look at this entire wireframe is that the scan and top up option are related to making payments. You scan someone else's QR code to make a payment, you top up to add money to your wallet. So transfer should also be next to these two because transfer is also money related. So what I'm going to do is add 3 buttons for scan, top up, and transfer to the top half of my design. So let's just go ahead and try to create a button. For that, I'll first create a rectangle and change the height of this rectangle to something like 36. And one thing I'm going to do is also add an ellipse and change the height of this ellipse to 24 by 24. And I'm going to change the background color of this button into this light primary color and change the corner radius to 6. Let's change the color of this ellipse into this particular color and place it on top of a rectangle. All right. And from the left side, I'm going to add a spacing of 6. You're going to learn a lot more about spacing later on in the series when we talk about white space and its importance. But for now, let's just keep it at 6. And I'll add a button for top, which is going to be there. Let's add some spacing, let's say of 8 pixels. And from the right side, I'll add spacing of 12. All right, so that is going to be our button. And specifically, I want to make this white and make this regular. Right. So now I want to add an icon over here for top up. So I'll go back to flat icons and search for an icon for up. And out of all of these, I think this one fits our purpose the best. Go ahead and download that, go back to Figma and just paste it in here. Change the size to something like 16 by 16. Control X and paste it on top of this particular ellipse and change the selection color to white. So that is going to be our button, and I would want to make this a little bit more smaller. So let's say 10 by 12, and that looks much better. And I can group this entire button and change this to top up and place it right below our wallet balance. Give it some spacing, let's say 32 pixels, and I'll hit Control D to copy this button, and I'll change this top up to scan, go back to flat icons, search for a scan option, and you can go ahead and do the same thing for transfer as well. So I'll just go ahead and do that really quickly. All right, so those three are going to be our main options. I'll go ahead and decrease the height of this rectangle and add some spacing, let's say 32 pixels. And that is how you create a UI design from a wireframe. I've created the UI design for the top half of this wireframe. You can go ahead and try to create the favorites options, check bank balance, and check history options. But this episode was more about how you conduct a visual design study and how to apply a visual style to your wireframes. You can go ahead and try to create more visual styles, try to experiment with all of these wireframes that we created in the last video and really see what kind of visual design fits your product. And once you're done with the visual design part and you're happy with it, you can start adding some other visual elements. Like I'll add an ellipse over here, change the color to this, place it in the background and place it over here, maybe duplicate it and place another ellipse smaller in size and place it over here. You can keep on adding elements such as these as you go on with your visual design. These make your visual design pop out a little more and make your app really stand out. You can go ahead and try to create designs for the other wireframes as I said, and that will be a great exercise into conducting visual language studies.